Good morning and welcome to Sunday with Michael Portillo. I hope that your Burns Night celebrations will not impair your enjoyment of today's programme. We've reached the final Sunday of January. We shall soon leave the month that's named after the Roman god of beginnings, endings and transitions as we look ahead to February with renewed vigour. In the hope that winter is nearing its conclusion, we can round off the month with 2 hours of arts, culture, current affairs and politics. Donald Trump's inaugural speech revealed a president determined to break with the recent past and with any kind of global consensus. It looks difficult for Sir Keir Starmer's Britain to find much in common with Trump's America. And Britain has left the European Union, offended Israel and is regularly denounced by former colonies. Do we have any friends abroad? And does it matter? My political panel will discuss. Britain was once an industrial heartland. But now some are saying that we're moving towards a zero industrial society. Columnist Matthew Lynn will share his thoughts on why manufacturing continues to decline and what that means for our country. A bracelet owned by Hollywood star Elizabeth Taylor and gifted to her by pop star Michael Jackson is set to go on auction this week, with experts suggesting that it could fetch in the region of £70,000. Specialist from Woolley and Wallace auction house, Alexandra Aguilar, will join me in the studio with the stunning bracelet in tow, and she's also bringing along another treasure to show you. And Stefan Kyriazis will grace us once more with his presence as he reflects on his theatrical adventures of the week. But before all of that, your news headlines with Sophia Windsor.
Michael, thank you. Good morning. It's just gone 11 o'clock. These are your headlines. Donald Trump has said he thinks Sir Keir Starmer has done a very good job thus far and said the pair will speak over the phone in the next 24 hours. The US President said he and the Prime Minister get along very well, despite Sir Keir Starmer being Liberal, which he said is a little bit different from me. Mr Trump told reporters on Air Force One that his first international trip could be to the UK or Saudi Arabia, the first country he travelled to as president during his first term. Sir Keir most recently met with Mr Trump at Trump Towers in New York during the presidential campaign. The Home Secretary has warned tech companies terrorist material viewed by Southport child killer Axel Ruder-Cabana could inspire another atrocity unless they take action. Yvette Cooper has written to X, Meta, TikTok, Google and YouTube, calling on them to urgently review material accessed by the killer, which is still available online. Ruder-Cabana easily downloaded an Al-Qaeda training manual and watched graphic footage of a terrorist knife attack before he killed 3 young girls. It comes as it's been revealed the Home Office missed several opportunities to identify Ruder-Cabana as a terror threat. A review found he was referred to anti-extremism programmes 3 times, according to the Sunday Times newspaper. It also revealed his obsession with mass shootings was dismissed by counter-terrorism officers as an interest in world news and that he was not in danger of being radicalised. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch told GBNews the issue of integration must be looked at following the Southport attack.
He should have been in love with this country. He should have been saying, this is the best country on earth. I say, and the parents, I don't know if they did or not, because that's how I feel. And I do think that we need to have a broader conversation about integration in this country. It's got to be active, not passive. It didn't matter so much when only a handful of people were coming from nearby countries at a very slow rate. Now, people from all over the place are coming very quickly, and because of technology, they can still keep their heads and their cultures elsewhere.
In other news, Israel has prevented thousands of displaced Palestinians from returning home to northern Gaza after accusing Hamas of breaching the ceasefire deal. This comes after Hamas released 4 Israeli female soldiers and Israel freed 200 Palestinian prisoners. But the Israeli government said Palestinians would not be allowed to travel north until plans were in place for the release of Israeli civilian Arbel Yahoud. According to the deal, Hamas was to release civilians before soldiers. More strong winds and heavy rain are on the way after Storm Eowyn was dubbed the strongest storm to hit the UK in 10 years, with wind gusts of up to 100 miles per hour. Around 100,000 in Northern Ireland and 35,000 in Scotland are still without power. Some will have to wait several days to be reconnected. Meanwhile, travel services remain severely disrupted in Scotland, with trains and ferries suspended and roads closed. And it's not over yet. The Spanish-named storm Herminia is on the way and will bring heavy rain, gales and hail snow up from the southwest today and on Monday. And Strictly Come Dancing star Wyn Evans has apologised after being caught on camera making a sexual comment about one of the show's female presenters. The Welsh opera singer has been touring with the live show after competing on the BBC One programme with Katya Jones last year. In the recording obtained by the Mail on Sunday, the 52-year-old was heard making a demeaning sexual remark to a woman during the launch event on the 16th of January. Evans has responded with a statement saying, "My language was inappropriate and unacceptable, for which I sincerely apologise." Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michael.
Well, thank you, Sophia Winslow. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, has said that Britain could learn from Donald Trump's positivity. Presumably, she means that she hopes to learn, since she, along with the Prime Minister, has spread gloom since last July and her budget has halted economic growth and reduced employment. But even if she now employs a little optimism and even if she backs airport expansion, British policy will not resemble Donald Trump's. We have no reason to expect a sealing of our border against migrants, nor will those working on diversity, equality and inclusion in the public sector be put on paid leave, nor will net zero be abandoned. Will it? On the other hand, even Labour does not dare to rejoin the European Union, and our EU partners are sore about Brexit. We have gratuitously offended Israel, and a bunch of Commonwealth countries harks on about slavery and demands reparations. Does Britain have any friends, and should we care? Joining me now is my panel, former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire, former Special Advisor to Nadhim Zahawi, James Price, and former MEP and columnist Patrick O'Flynn. Scarlett, now, we're hearing today that, in fact, Donald Trump gets on well with Sir Keir Starmer and thinks Sir Keir Starmer is doing a good job. So have I got it all wrong? Will we, after all, see a great friendship between Starmer and Trump?
Well, I have to say that after all the briefings, which we have no idea where they came from, but I mean, I have been reading over and over again in newspapers about how Trump was determined to get Keir out, how, you know, he was going to turn down Peter Mandelson to humiliate this government. And then you hear him saying, you know, I don't agree with him, but he's doing a good job and he hasn't been there. So I'm as surprised as you.
This is because Donald Trump is famously a great diplomat.
I'm not sure that the Danish Prime Minister would feel the same after listening to 45 minutes of being shouted at about...
Where's the truth in all this?
So I think the truth is that actually Donald Trump is behaving like a grown-up, as Keir Starmer has been, and it's really, really important that the countries get on and they do their best, and that we don't have silly game playing about who's thinking. But what's, I mean, if we go back to Rachel Reeves, right, is that what she was talking about is about talking countries up, and Donald Trump. I have to say, having been talked America down for 4 years, is now saying that, you know, we've got a new thing. And it is really, really important that Rachel says, finally, you know, we can see the sunny uplands. Now, many of us felt that when she did her budget, she should have said, you know, this is really tough. We know this is really tough. We've got a disaster that we're trying to turn around, but it will get better. And she is saying that. And actually, the IMF are backing her and saying that I think we're going to be the second biggest growth in Europe. So I think that actually things are beginning to look better.
James, what do you make of it all? Do you think Donald Trump... I mean, should we be worried that it's taken him the first week of his presidency without making contact with the British Prime Minister? He says there might be a phone call tomorrow. Also said that there might be an early visit to the United Kingdom. So how do you think the relationship stands? It is... I mean, we think of it as a special relationship.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I think that the United States and the United Kingdom should have the closest of relationships. Same language, same legal system broadly, same political system, same sets of values, same historical roots, going all the way back to the kind of Anglo-Saxon wit and gamot of this island of, 1,500 years ago. All the conditions are there. Donald Trump's own mother was British. She was from Scotland. He's clearly the most pro-British president we've probably ever seen in the US. And that's great timing because America is the biggest economy in the world.
He doesn't suffer from Irish republicanism either.
Well, no, quite. Exactly right, which I think has been a bit of a blight on our Anglo-US relations for far too long. He clearly loves the UK and he clearly doesn't like seeing the kind of doldrums in which we're suffering at the moment. So if he can, by leading the United States economy to ever greater heights, which it looks like he'll do, rebuilding the strength of their military, if that inspires Rachel Reeves and the rest of the Labour Party, and that's a good thing for the UK. And after 6 months, as you say, of Labour talking the country down and that budget that Rachel Reeves had being so immediately destructive, if she has seen the light, then we can quote the good book and say is more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repenteth.
Patrick, what do you make of it? And if you want to mention Nigel Farage in your answer, please do.
Well, I think there's finally been some sort of competent diplomatic choreography, right? Rachel Reeves goes out of her way to praise Donald Trump, say we could do with some of his positivity. Donald Trump, it turns out, who knew is a man who obviously likes being praised, and then gives this limited praise in return to Keir Starmer, quote, doing a good job. Now, I don't think anyone can stand back and think Rachel Reeves really thinks Donald Trump's positivity is great and there's anything good to be thought of him at all. And I don't think anyone would think Donald Trump was in any way warm towards Keir Starmer and his whole political programme. But I am sort of heartened that both sides behaving in a grown-up fashion to a certain way. But on the wider point about Rachel Reeves, I think her underperformance and lack of calibre is one of the big facts of the first 6 months of Labour's pretty disastrous regime. And, as you made clear in your intro, she stoked up the negativity for political purposes. She'd gone through the election on a manifesto which was, quote, a big lie, everything's funded, no tax rises needed. And then she delayed the budget far too long, so we had months of doom and gloom, this elevation of the supposed huge black hole, and then the budget itself, a lot of the tax rises were to cover further spending rises, particularly for the NHS, with no productivity strings attached, and the biggest tax was this tax on employment. So it's been a catastrophe, and she seems to be bunny hopping back and across the road like a learner driver on their first lesson. So I don't think that there's much to be said for the idea that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are getting on board a Trump train, going for growth, energy costs being an absolute, key focus on the differences between our prospects and America's.
Scarlett, what about Europe? What are the opportunities for Britain to forge a closer relationship with European Union countries?
Well, we do have to be careful because Brexit is Brexit and we're not going to go back on the referendum. And what the Europeans would like is some sort of free movement for the under-30s. And Keir Starmer has said no to that. Personally, I think it's a shame. I think, it's incredible that we have the Australians and the New Zealanders over, and that's absolutely fine, and we can't have Europeans. But that's it. But actually, I think the Europeans want a better trade deal. Every time it's really inconvenient trading with Britain, right, because there's so much bureaucracy. So I think that actually they would like it to be better. They'd like it to be closer. And what Britain wants is much more, we want a better trade deal, but also the security is, it's absolutely madness that we can no longer swap things with Europe so that we don't know, we're not in all the European security stuff. So that actually I think that Keir Starmer has made it absolutely clear what the mood music is. He's made it clear what the red lines are, and now it's about negotiating. I don't think there's a problem there. And I think as long as everybody's clear and the Europeans and the British are clear, everything will be fine.
James, is there a problem and is there scope?
Well, I just think it's a complete red herring to be chasing extra links with Europe when it's so far behind the United States. You know, in the US in the last year, we've seen huge advancements in this kind of artificial intelligence. You know, we'll give you magical answers, you ask it questions, amazing things that happen. Elon Musk is catching 40-foot skyscraper-sized rockets out of the sky with Mechazilla arms, all these amazing things. What's the biggest innovation in the European Union? When you buy a bottle of Coke, you can't get the lid off properly because it's attached to it. Right? That's why are we choosing to shackle ourselves to those people? The only reason that the IMF is predicting Britain to have better growth than the rest of Europe is because Europe isn't having any growth whatsoever. So I think it's a complete red herring to worry about.
Well, I wouldn't place too much kudos in IMF growth forecasts. People seem to think IMF says we'll have this much growth over the next year or two. That's real. It's not a real thing. They're almost certainly about as right as a weather forecaster predicting what the weather will be on this day next year. It's real straw, a finger in the wind stuff. I think I agree with James that the EU relationship is relatively marginal now. It's a real, Europe is a very fast declining, although it's still got an absolute mass in terms of market. It's very fast declining. Yes, there can be marginal improvements, marginal defrictionalisation of trading arrangements. It's not the big story. Trump and American growth is a big story. Other regions of the world, we're into the Pacific Partnership, albeit from a low base, that can grow fast. I don't think you're going to get big early wins on economic growth out of Europe. Obviously, we've had the Observer today trying to reheat this notion, with Lib Dems in tow and a few old academics that Europe's the big way forward. No.
Thank you. A very, very interesting and very amusing discussion too. Thank you to the panel. That's Scarlett Maguire, James Price and Patrick O'Flynn. They'll rejoin me at noon to discuss why about 1 in 5 Britons aged between 18 and 44 would rather have a strong national leader who doesn't have to bother with elections than democracy. Coming up, Britain was once the heartland of manufacturing, famed for the Industrial Revolution that swept across the world. But we are now moving to what some are calling a zero industrial society. Columnist Matthew Lim will join me to discuss that. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
TikTok chefs, Instagram chefs, that they put children off or young people off of cooking because it's so expertly done they can't do it. No, my young lad, he's 17, he is amazing in the kitchen. Oh, he is. He's amazing in the kitchen. And he gets it all off TikTok. He comes down, he can put burgers, wraps, stews, curries, sauces, and the smells in the kitchen. I said, where'd you get these? Oh, just TikTok, I'm trying it out. And it's just amazing the things that he can conjure up. So for some people, it might be... it's an inspiration for him. So they're saying that it's intimidation. For my boy, it's an inspiration. They say it's entertainment. For my boy, it's an infomercial. I watch him doing his stuff. At that stage, I could do baked beans on toast and knock up a salad. That was it. But my boy can do all sorts of stuff.
It makes it accessible as well, doesn't it? Because lots of people say, like, you need an education to be in the kitchen, or you need to go find yourself loads of cookbooks. But you don't.
No.
You go on your phone now.
Well, I mean, like, all the spices, sesame oil. I mean, I'm amazed at the stuff that he does. So it's encouraging. All you just need is a kitchen well-stocked and have a go. And understand that failure is actually the route to learning. I mean, he's made mistakes, he's stuck stuff in the bin, but that young man, I am amazed at some of the stuff he does.
I don't mind cooking at all. It's cleaning up that I have the problem with. Dawn, let's talk about sex.
Can I just say there are things called restaurants, by the way? Just put that one. My hell, I don't even know where the kitchen is.
OK.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Britain was once the industrial powerhouse of the world. Now it's argued that we're moving from a post-industrial society to a zero-industrial society, with major manufacturers like Airbus and Dyson slashing jobs. As a result, the United Kingdom has dropped out of the top 10 of manufacturing nations. The push for net zero policies like electric cars and green steel is driving up costs and forcing plants to shut and to move production abroad. The decline of manufacturing isn't just about GDP, it's apparently also deepening the regional inequalities, as many of the jobs that vanish are outside the southeast of England. Joining me now is the columnist Matthew Lynn. Matthew, welcome. Give me some idea of what's been happening in very recent years. In a column that you've just written, you call attention to how manufacturing has declined since 2021.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, you kind of touched on this in your intro. We kind of got used to the idea that we're not the workshop of the world anymore. It's not the kind of Victorian times. We kind of got over the whole kind of Thatcher, restructuring of industry when we got rid of a lot of our heavy industries and moved to a more service-based economy. But we were actually in a fairly stable state for, 15, 20 years, about 8 to 9%, depending a little bit how you count it, of the economy was based on manufacturing. It was actually, and it was pretty good stuff. This wasn't the old house shipbuilding, the car industries hooked on state subsidies and protection. These were quite competitive companies that were doing well in global markets. But what we've suddenly seen in the last 3 years or so is a sudden and quite rapid deindustrialization. So if you look at an industry like chemicals, that's down 40% since 2021, electrical engineering down 30%, overall manufacturing down about 10%, and we dropped out of the top 10 last year behind Mexico. We're behind France and Italy, which are, fairly similar economies with some strengths, some of the same weaknesses. So we're seeing this very rapid fall off in manufacturing industry, which I think people actually haven't really picked up on yet very much. And if you look at the trends, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit when I call it a kind of zero industrial society, but not exaggerating that much. Lots of companies are closing down and cutting factories. On current trends, we get towards zero quite quickly.
Yes. Now, to what extent do you think the green policies are responsible here? I mean, you're being very fair here. This is something that you say has been happening at least since 2021, so it covers more than one government. To what extent are the green policies responsible, do you think?
Quite a lot. We have to pin it on that. I mean, I think the number one culprit is we have totally insane electricity costs. That's partly the green thing, it's partly poor management, the whole bunch of stuff. But, we're 70%, industrial electricity costs 70% more in the UK than it does in the United States. We're about 40% more than than it is in France. And these are just huge costs. I was looking up, you take an industry like cement, pretty basic industry. Everyone needs cement. Electricity costs 50 to 60% of the cost of running that kind of plant is the cost of electricity. If your electricity is just insanely expensive, it's just impossible for companies to compete. So that's a big part of it. We have a lot of green targets. If you look at what's happening in the North Sea, for example, which is was one of our strongest industries, we're not allowing any new development. We're putting windfall taxes on the companies that are there and they're closing down. And then we have other problems which we're quite familiar with. Like the planning restrictions and coming into the new government, so a lot of this happened under the Tories, but under the new government, as we saw in the budget, big increases in employment taxes, that's going to make it worse. So I think we had the green policies, not the whole story, but they're a very big part of the story. And I think we have to be more realistic about it. And we can all debate whether we want to be the global leader in getting to net zero or not. But I think we have to start being honest about the toll that it's taking on our manufacturing industry.
Well, when I was part of the Thatcher government in the 1980s, we, I think, argue that it didn't particularly matter what the balance of the economy was. It was possible to have a modern economy based on services. So does it matter if we go from 8% manufacturing to 4% manufacturing or even 0% manufacturing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you were there, Michael, and you had that debate. And I think the Thatcher cabinet was right. I mean, we were very uncompetitive. There were lots of industries, which for historical reasons we were strong in, and we were, shipbuilding, be a good example. A lot of mass manufacturing, cars, kind of basic industrial products. We were never going to compete with the Koreans. It was more the Japanese back in the 80s, but now it's the Chinese. And we were never going to be competitive in those kind of markets. We're not going to go back to sort of 20, 30% of the economy being made up of manufacturing. And it was the right decision not to have endless subsidies. But what we're looking at now is much more of a self-inflicted wound, where, we had companies in niches in manufacturing in areas like chemicals, defense, electrical engineering, which were strong in global markets, that made good profits. And because we're imposing green targets and sky-high power and energy costs on them, we're closing them down for no good reason. So I think it's a very different, balance than it was, when you were in government in the 1980s and when those decisions were taken. I think it's going to cost us. It's manufacturing. You're absolutely right. You don't want to kind of fetishize it and say, manufacturing is better than having law firms or ad consultancies or tech startups. It doesn't really matter. All companies that make a profit are good and valuable for the economy. But manufacturing has, lots of benefits. It creates jobs in the right parts of the country. Skilled, manual, blue-collar work, which is good for men, particularly young men, who are often quite excluded from the services economy. But you don't want to get rid of it just for kind of fun, if you see what I mean, just out of a kind of moral crusade. It would be better if we had, if we could stick with the 8 to 10% of GDP in manufacturing. It's hard to imagine that we're going to have a healthy economy where there literally isn't a single factory left in the UK.
Matthew Lynn, thank you very much for drawing our attention to what is happening, because I had kind of missed how big some of the movements have been just since 2021, and you have drawn our attention to it. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, a bracelet once owned by the dazzling film star Elizabeth Taylor, a bracelet gifted to her by the pop star Michael Jackson, is set to go on auction this week. And specialist from Woolley & Wallace, the auction house, Alexandra Aguilar, will join me with the stunning jewellery. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. A dry start for many of us, but a cloudy start too, and there is some rain on its way, spreading in from the southwest as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So a damp start for Devon and Cornwall and into South Wales this morning. That area of rain pushing its way north and eastwards as we head towards Sunday afternoon. There will be some sunshine across the very far north of Scotland, but that heavy rain arriving across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and eastern parts of England by Sunday afternoon. Heavy blustery showers feeding in quite closely behind, but perhaps a little bit milder across the very far southwest. Temperatures here 10 or 11 degrees, but generally around average elsewhere. As we then go into Sunday evening, those heavy and blustery showers continue to feed in from the southwest. These perhaps merging to longer spells of rain at times, although there will be some breaks in those showers as we head through Sunday evening. Longer spells of rain likely though, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, into southern parts of Scotland too, and perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground here, but generally falling as rain to lower levels. Northern Scotland just holding on to those clearer skies for a time during Sunday evening, but that rain eventually pushes its way northwards through the rest of Sunday and into the start of Monday, so almost anywhere seeing a damp night to come. Further outbreaks of rain then arriving across the very far southeast, pushing northwards again into the early hours of Monday morning, so perhaps some spray on the roads here during Monday morning's rush hour, and heavy blustery showers continuing to feed in from the southwest, so generally a bit of a milder night under all of that cloud and rain. Into the start of Monday then, and low pressure very much in charge of our weather. Heavy blustery showers continue to pile in from the southwest, perhaps emerging to longer spells of rain across northern areas, and perhaps again falling as sleet and snow over any high ground. That brisk southwesterly breeze does bring us milder temperatures than we saw over the weekend. Temperatures a little above average for the time of year, so 10, perhaps 11 degrees in the south and 6 or 7 degrees further north.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. I've never thought of my jewellery as trophies. I'm here to take care of it and to love it, for we are only temporary custodians of beauty. So said Elizabeth Taylor, the glamorous Hollywood movie star, who indeed shone brightly from the silver screen. A bracelet given to her by pop star Michael Jackson is set to go to auction this week, with experts suggesting that it may fetch in the region of £70,000. Another fascinating item set to go under the hammer this week is an Egyptian-inspired Cartier necklace dating from the 1920s. Well, specialist from Woolley & Wallace Auction House, Alexandra Aguilar, joins me now. Alexandra, how lovely to see you. And I wonder whether you were going to bring the jewellery in. You're actually wearing the jewellery. So shall we begin with the bracelet? You're wearing it there on your arm. Tell us a little bit about that. Shall we start with what it consists of?
Right, so it's a diamond line bracelet, as you can see. It's really a beautiful thing. It's made of 27 diamonds with a yellow tint, and they are mounted on yellow gold, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful piece. But there's more to it, and as you mentioned, it's the provenance. It comes from the collection of Elizabeth Taylor, really one of the queens of Hollywood, and it was given to her by Michael Jackson.
Have you any idea why Michael Jackson gave her such a magnificent gift?
They were very, very good friends. They were friends for over 20 years, and he knew her love for diamonds, for jewellery, and we know that they exchanged many presents, including this fantastic bracelet.
Would that have been made new at that time?
Yes, I believe so.
We're talking, what, about the 1970s or something like that?
Oh, maybe a little bit later.
Later, 80s?
Yes, that's right. But what's particularly interesting about this one is all the 27 diamonds have the same colour. And it's very difficult to find stones with the same colour, with the same yellow tint. So it makes it particularly beautiful and particularly special.
Why do you think it will go for about £70,000?
It's... well, it is a beautiful piece. It's very wearable, as you can see, and there is the provenance is amazing. Jewelry from the collection of Elizabeth Taylor is very sought after, of course.
Yes.
Her collection was sometimes referred to as the best diamonds, the best collection in Hollywood, the crown jewels of Hollywood.
But, I mean, diamonds have a market value, and, of course, they're categorised by carat, so we know how fine they are and how much they weigh and all that sort of thing. So you can do a calculation of so many diamonds, there's so many carats, that comes to so much money, and then you kind of add a premium for the provenance. Is that more or less right?
That's right. And this provenance is quite something. It does add quite a lot of value to the piece. Pieces from her collection don't come up on the market very often, and so this is quite an opportunity to own a piece from Elizabeth Taylor's collection, really.
Very good. Shall we turn to the other piece, which you're wearing around your neck? Tell us about that.
Now, this is quite an exciting piece. It's a very exciting rediscovery from our jewelry department. This is by Cartier, and it was actually published in the Illustrated London News. exactly 101 years ago today.
Right. Right.
And in that publication, there were also pictures of Tutankhamun's tomb. And at the time, there was that interest for Egyptology, for what was in the tomb of the famous king.
Yes.
And Cartier decided to produce this very limited edition of jewelry inspired by these Egyptian discoveries. Now, this particular pendant was in the same family for nearly 100 years.
Yeah.
And our specialists, our department with Mariel Whiting, recognized it as the lost Cartier pendant that was published in that in the Illustrated London News.
Because it went through a transformation, did it not?
That's right. When it was published, there was a small figure on top which depicted the god Nefertem, which is a god related to healing. And so that was when Egyptian antiques were very much in vogue. But this changed shortly after once people involved in the excavation of the tomb started dying prematurely.
Ooh.
And all of a sudden, people didn't really want to own Egyptian things. And quite a lot was given to the British Museum, actually, in the 1920s.
The curse of the mummy, as it was thought of, yes.
Yes.
That's fascinating. Can I ask you a question which you're probably not expecting?
Sure.
Have you ever come across someone like me who has an absolute aversion to jewellery? I can't bear looking at jewellery. I can't touch jewellery. It gives me the creeps. Have you ever come across this?
Yes, I think, yes.
Oh, you have, yes. I believe, I can't remember the name of it, but there is a real condition. I've looked it up on the internet. There is a condition.
Oh,
and I don't know what gave it to me.
I'm sorry you suffer from it.
Well, I'm OK at this distance, but, you know, I wouldn't want to handle those things. However, let's move on to a more cheerful subject. What do you feel like when you wear it? What does it make you feel like?
Personally, I'm sorry, I do love it. It feels quite special. It feels quite worrying as well, because it's from the 1920s. It's really a piece of treasure, really. It's over 100 years old. And so it feels quite special. And also the bracelet. I mean, from Elizabeth Taylor's collection given by Michael Jackson, they are really very special pieces. And I think that's what will really appeal to the buyers when they come for sale next week.
Yeah, tell me about the auction. Tell me about the atmosphere. I mean, we often see auctions represented in fiction, where people are on the lines to people all over the world calling in bids. Is that the sort of thing that's going to be happening in your auction room? Yes.
I expect so, yes. This is a 2-day sale of fine jewellery, and it's usually quite exciting. There are people in the room, yes, shouting numbers, and the auctioneer, and I think it will be me selling these items next week, is usually quite excited during the jewellery auctions. We have bids coming from the internet, from people in the room, on the telephone as well. So there's a lot going on at the same time. It's very exciting.
So you are looking forward to it. And you are personally an auctioneer. I didn't realise that.
Yes, I am.
Any secrets for how to be an auctioneer? What's the key to being a good auctioneer?
That's a good question. I'm not too sure. You need to know your numbers. You need to know your increments.
Yeah.
You need to start with that because you can't make mistakes.
Yeah.
But then after that, it's just about enjoying yourself.
It has to be the right increments for the audience. You have to sense whether they're going to be smallish jumps or biggish jumps.
Yes.
But it's your responsibility to get the best possible price.
That's right.
Well, I wish you luck. It would be a very thrilling occasion.
Thank you.
And you won't be surprised to know that I won't be there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But Alexandra, thank you so much. And Alexandra Aguilar for coming on today, and good luck with the sale.
Thank you.
Coming up, Stefan Kyriazis will take to the GB News stage once more to discuss his theatrical excursions of the week. But first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's plenty of sunshine on offer for many over the next couple of days in Europe, but there is some heavy rain as well, particularly for parts of Portugal, northern Spain, northwestern parts of France, and some blustery westerly winds as well continuing throughout Monday. Further east, though, there is plenty of sunshine on offer for southern parts of Italy, Greece, Cyprus, seeing plenty of sunshine throughout Monday afternoon. Temperatures here generally in the mid to high teens, with the highest temperatures likely across Tenerife, where we'll see temperatures around 22 or 23.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lately, it's getting much better. The people getting more educated in terms of overall well-being of the skin health rather than temporary aesthetic treatments. Because most of the treatments in aesthetic, it doesn't change the texture of the skin. It just gives like volumetric result or remove the wrinkles temporarily.
So what are the most popular treatments that people are after?
According to a statistic report, first is anti-wrinkle, then dermal filler, then energy-based device. But lately, biostimulators also became very popular. And
So what do you mean by biostimulators?
Biostimulator, any substance that can change the texture of the skin, or like it will lead to postpone the aging process or proliferate more collagen, increase the elasticity of the skin, such as polynucleotide or exosome or different vitamins and minerals in the form of mesotherapy considered as a biostimulator.
Turkey's a particularly popular destination because the costs are so much lower. There have also been a lot of horror stories about what can happen when things go wrong, even people dying from post-surgery complications. What would you advise people?
Choose as a practitioner or surgeon very carefully and never prioritize price over quality. This is your face after all, your body after all. And mistakes can be reversible. It can be irreversible. And sometimes it's not like a booking restaurant or hotel. It's a sensitive matter that can affect their confidence and skin and body for life. So they need to choose very wisely. They need to search what kind of methodology that particular surgeon, they perform the treatments. Are they using any safety tools?
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Joy of joys. Stefan Kyriazis joins me now to talk about his favourite trips into the land of make-believe this last week. Great to see you, Stefan. I think we're going to begin with one of your very strong subjects, if I may say so, which is ballet.
Ballet. This was my gateway ballet. So this is the ballet that I love, love, love. I've seen it so many times. I cry from the beauty of it. Now, it's a devastating story, but it's so exquisitely done. So the choreography, costumes, music by Tchaikovsky, and it's called Onegin. Now, you like the sort of shrieky singing version, I think.
Yes. Tchaikovsky wrote an opera called Yevgeny or Eugene Onegin, and much of the music for the ballet is borrowed from that.
Yeah, but it's also taken from elsewhere. So there's offcuts of other Tchaikovsky, all thriller, no filler, beautifully done. We've got a very, for me, quite a long little trailer, but I love it so much. If you don't love ballet, you don't think it's exciting, dramatic, real, watch this trailer, because it's gorgeous.
It's a story by Pushkin. One friend challenges another friend to a duel after Onegin has behaved very badly. Onegin then, spoiler alert, kills his friend in a duel. We've just seen that. By the way, Pushkin himself would die dueling.
Oh, OK.
Oh, yeah. Right. I mean, you're so enthusiastic about it. You love it.
Well, this is kind of love, rejection, drama, duels, betrayals, and also a bit of a life lesson. And we were talking about the fact that Onegin you regard as not a nice chap in literature.
An absolute cad,
Yes.
I think he is. Tatiana falls madly in love with him. She writes a letter saying, I'm desperately in love with you, and he absolutely turns her down flat. And then behaves outrageously and kills his friend and so on. I don't think he's got a redeeming feature, but you rather like him.
I like the saturnine, darkly dressed, misunderstood type. So for me, but this is a ballet that also requires acting, which is what I love about it. So John Cranko choreographed it in 1965, but it's very, very, very beautiful classical ballet lines, which I love, but modern speed, which I love. So no walking around and posing and gesturing and everything. It just claps along very fast, and it requires acting, and that's what we got. I mean, opening night, this is not the cast that we saw there, but we saw Marinela Nunez, 42 years old, playing a young ingenue. She's exquisite, and then the opening sequence we saw was her dream of when she still thinks he's a lovely chap, and she dreams this romantic dance together. I saw the cast with Rhys Clark. He's 6'3", she's 5'8". Limbs, beautiful extensions, the whole thing's gorgeous. And also, for me, he took us on a bit of a journey with Onegin. So he kind of, by the end, he gets his comeuppance, he gets his heart broken, so to speak. The ending is gorgeous, it's dramatic. It's on at the Royal Opera House.
Till when?
It's on until February the 25th, selling very heavily. However, it's back again in May and June. I can't recommend this enough. Don't be afraid of ballet. No. It's a proper adult dramatic story, but also beautiful. So highly recommended.
Absolutely fantastic. What a very, very good start. Did you like anything else this week?
I'm on a roll this week. Loved everything. No bitching from me this week. So next one is The Shark is Broken. This is a big UK tour. Now, this show was in London's West End a few years back. This is basically the story of Jaws behind the scenes, 1975. And there were 3 mechanical sharks, all of which notoriously didn't work very well. So their actors were constantly on this little boat out in the harbour for days and days. The camera crew was seasick. The actors, you had Robert Shaw, legend, drinking heavily. You had Richard Dreyfuss, who was young, neurotic, and possibly taking substances at the time as well. And then Roy Schneider, who's very pedantic and dry. The 3 of them were stuck on this small boat, and the radio messages just kept saying, the shark is broken today. And they were stuck out there for days and days. And it's co-written by Ian Shaw, which is Robert's son, who also plays him. So you have this wonderful double layer to it. And his father was notoriously, a bounder and a sort of one of the old Hollywood hard-drinking, hard-hitting types. But there's also beautiful melancholy to it. If you love films, it is packed with fantastic little inside jokes, really catty comments about actors and directors. The boys are sitting there kind of discussing the film, and we've got a little clip that shows some of their banter.
The USS Indianapolis, June the 29th, 1945. Damn near 1,100 men went over the side. There was no rafts, none. Oh, for God's sake, I can't say this. It's duller than my tax return. Who gets top billing?
What do you think it's about? What? This goddamn movie.
It's about a shark. Do you really think they're going to be talking about this in 40 years?
I would have thought the great difficulty was sustaining it throughout the play, but you say they do.
They really, really do. This is wonderful. It's very simple. It's just a cutaway of the Orca, which was the little boat they were out on. So they're just sat in this cutaway, and these screens behind, all of us have said, a lot of critics, like, take your tablets beforehand, because I was sat there, and after a while I was just feeling a little bit queasy. But yeah, it builds so much atmosphere. It's so funny and sharp, but you've got real drama, 3 very different characters. Brilliant throwaway comments about what you think of this young director. He's not going to amount to much, with Steven Spielberg off stage coming through on little announcements the whole time. It's an absolute joy, but it's also about humanity, and this extra added layer of the son playing the father makes it rather beautiful as well. I absolutely loved it.
Did you say where until when?
This one is on tour. So it's on tour all the way through, I think, again, until May. all over the country. Highly recommended, easy to find, thesharkisbroken.com website. You can find all the information there. And then another one, massive key change for a different type of drama. We've got Kyoto, which is based on the 1997 COP climate conference, which I know sounds thrilling.
Well, it's been described as a political thriller,
Yeah.
and I thought this was a contradiction in terms. A political thriller set in a climate change conference.
Yes, which we've got another little sneak peek. Take a look at this, and then
can't wait.
I think we can all agree on one thing. The times you live in are truly awful. There's food shortages, runaway inflation, culture wars, real wars, race riots, fake news, insane insurrections, global pandemics, and on top of all of that, a planet in literal meltdown. And if you're a guy like me, looking at a time like now, the main thing you think is, wow, man, the 1990s were freaking glorious.
So that, Stephen Kunken, who is extraordinary, he's playing Don Perlman, who was the real-life kind of oil lobbyist activist, had worked in the Reagan administration, was very notorious later for being always behind the scenes, lurking in corridors, often ejected from rooms. And he was sort of somewhat in cahoots with the Saudis a lot of the time, but he was also feeding them strategies. And their whole plan was to delay, weaken, cast doubt. So there's a lot going on. You also can't deny the modern parallels. It's obviously looped back around. We've just got Trump pulling America back out of the Paris Accords. But also, this is by the people. It's called The Good Chance Company. They did The Jungle, which was set in the Calais camps, the migrant camps.
Yes, indeed.
And that was, they actually set up a theatre there, and then they made a play about it from talking to the people. And what they do also is very, very immersive. So the Calais one, the audience was in the Afghan cafe in the camp, supposedly. All real-life testimony, a bit like this, real-life people. But the audience, this time, you saw a little bit of it there. It's at Soho Place, glorious theatre, which is in the round. The stage is circular. He and other characters standing on the stage, but then all the way set around is like a conference table. So then the first act builds the story. Second act takes us to the conference. They're all set around, but also the audience are some of the conference members as well, sat in these seats. So the whole thing, you saw there's screens, there's, oh, there we go, you can see it. There's video screens, news footage, everything. And also within these terms, a thriller, because it's the back and forth of what can they get done, what can they get through, and a very last-minute sort of saving grace to be decided for the future of our planet. Thrilling stuff on at Soho Place until May. Fantastic. And you learn loads without realising you're learning it, which is the best type of theatre.
I have to stop you there, Stefan, but I'm so pleased that you're enthusiastic about everything this week. Thank you, Stefan Kyriazis. That concludes the first hour of Sunday with Michael Portillo. Please rejoin us at noon, where my panel will discuss why about a fifth of British voters under the age of 44 say they favour a strong leader rather than one who has to bother with elections. I shall ask my panel how that can be. I'll be probing whether classical music is worth the effort required to enjoy it. Ian Leslie will be making the case for why it repays time and investment. And last evening was Burns Night, which is why I'm dressed like this. And while celebrations are often focused on suppers and whiskies, what of the poet Robert Burns and his verses? James Fairbairn of the Burns Club of London will be here. And as we near the end of dry January, the wine expert Lily Thomas will be here to recommend some of the very best wines with which to begin February. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News. See you at noon.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We hold on to very unsettled weather across the UK over the next few days. All of us seeing some rain at times, often pretty blustery too. Low pressure is anchored towards the west of the UK, a deep area of low pressure, tightly backed isobars, indicating the strength of the winds, and weather fronts moving in from the southwest as we head through the rest of the day on Sunday. So looking at things in more detail for this afternoon, and confirmation of wet and windy weather sweeping its way north and eastwards across the UK. The far north of Scotland hold on to some fine conditions, certainly until later in the afternoon, and started to turn brighter with some showers developing across the southwest of the UK. Particularly blustery with gales, though, out toward the west and southwest of the UK. Quite chilly towards the north, mild elsewhere, but those temperatures pretty academic given the very unsettled weather. As we head into the evening and overnight, we hold on to some rain across central parts of Scotland. Towards the north, there's still some fine conditions to end the day, but further south, as I say, there will be some rain, some hill snow too across central parts of Scotland. For Northern Ireland, it's a blustery end to Sunday, some showery bursts of rain, and pretty showery across the central slice generally of the UK, with some clearer spells towards the south for a time, but notice further outbreaks of rain starting to push in from the southwest, and that heralds a pretty unsettled night to come across the UK. The first band of rain with some hill snow affecting the far north of the UK there. A further pulse of wet weather moving its way northeastwards across England and Wales. We need to keep an eye on the strength of the wind, particularly down towards the southeast tonight. Gales are quite likely in places here. And wherever you are, generally frost-free. A touch of frost possible towards the far north of Scotland, but elsewhere temperatures generally in mid-single figures. As for us, Monday then, it's a very unsettled start to the new working week, I'm afraid. Low pressure dominating once again. Showers or longer spells of rain in all parts of the UK. Blustery winds too, particularly out towards the south and west of the UK. Some particularly heavy rain across parts of Wales at times too. And again, those temperatures close to the seasonal average, 5 to 9 Celsius, but the wind and rain feeling much cooler out and about.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say
Fun. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Underestimate what you did, because to do it in their backyard as well, I bet they weren't happy about it, were they, Brad?
No, definitely not. Well, it makes it all the more sweeter. So they're usually pretty dominant in a two-man event, but four-man's usually where we can challenge them. And yeah, we managed to do it yesterday and put down 2 solid runs. And yeah.
So yeah, funding was a big issue for us in the last quad, but because of our results recently, we've picked up a lot more funding from UK Sport. So we're well funded now, and but yeah, the Bob is in the back of the van behind us, so we're driving it down to St Moritz as we speak. So yeah, that's how it all works in the background in bobsleigh.
Brad, you're the pilot, correct? So you're up front.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? I always wonder, because I remember seeing John Noakes on. Do you remember John Noakes on Blue Peter when he fell out of the Bob and he ended up showing the back of his backside on TV because he had a big scar on there? What? So you got the brake man. You're at the front. So where are you then, Aaron? Are you what number are you?
So I'm number 3. Yeah.
Right. So what do you do there? Is it just a matter of it's the running power is what it's all about to get off to a good start, and then you can sit and enjoy the ride?
Yeah, that's it. So for number 2 and myself, number 3, it's all about getting that Bob off the line and then just zipping it up to as high a speed as we can, basically. Yeah. Getting in, staying low, having good aerodynamics, and staying still and let Brad do the work.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable position for them, because we're bending them and twisting them into quite an uncomfortable position to get as aerodynamic as possible. And when you've got 6 times G's pushing you through that is not... Yeah, not
definitely
fun.
Stiff back this morning, that's for sure.
Because I'm just thinking where me and Eamon would sit. Is it 2 and 3, or would he go at number 4? What do you fancy?
I would be too frightened to do that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon and welcome to the second hour of Sunday with Michael Portillo. American poet Robert Frost once said, "The afternoon knows what the morning never suspected." Indeed, that may be true for our show, dear viewers, as we hope to surprise and delight you with more arts, current affairs, history and wine to ease you into the rest of your Sunday. An opinion survey by FGS Global Radar finds that 14% of people agree with the statement, "The best system for running a country is a strong leader who doesn't have to bother with elections." That figure rises to around 1 in 5 under the age of 44, with additional large numbers who pick "I don't know" in preference to expressing support for democracy. How can this be happening in a country that fought alone while much of the world was overwhelmed by communism or fascism? Are those poll respondents serious? And do they see what happens in Russia, China or Iran? Do they think about the non-election occurring today in Belarus? My panel will return. Is classical music worth it? Journalist Ian Leslie recently attended Mahler's Symphony No. 3 at the Barbican and has reflected on why classical music deserves time and effort, and he'll offer some advice to encourage newcomers to engage. Give me a spark on nature's fire, that's all the learning I desire. Robert Burns' deep love for music, pastoral poems, made him Scotland's most adored poet. And yesterday brought Burns Night, the annual celebration to mark his birthday. I'll be joined by a member of the Burns Club of London to discuss the poetry. And as dry January draws to a close, unnoticed by me, wine expert Lily Thomas will be here to guide us through some of her top picks for February. But before all of that, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Michael, thank you. Good afternoon. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Donald Trump has said he thinks Sir Keir Starmer has done a very good job thus far and said the pair will speak over the phone over the next 24 hours. The US President said he and the Prime Minister get along well, despite Sir Keir Starmer being Liberal, which he said is a little bit different from me. Mr. Trump told reporters on Air Force One that his first international trip could be to the UK or Saudi Arabia, the first country he travelled to as president during his first term. Sir Keir most recently met with Mr. Trump at Trump Tower in New York during the presidential campaign. The Home Secretary has warned tech companies terrorist material viewed by Southport killer Axel Ruda-Cabana could inspire another atrocity unless they take action. Yvette Cooper has written to X, Meta, TikTok, Google and YouTube, calling on them to urgently review material accessed by the Southport killer, which is still available online. Ruda-Cabana easily downloaded an Al-Qaeda training manual and watched graphic footage of a terrorist knife attack before he killed 3 young girls. It comes as it's been revealed the Home Office missed several opportunities to identify him as a terror threat. A review found Ruda-Cabana was referred to an anti-extremism programme 3 times, according to the Sunday Times newspaper. It also revealed his obsession with mass shootings was dismissed by counter-terrorism officers as an interest in world news and that he was not a danger of being radicalised. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch told GB News the issue of integration must be looked at following the attack.
He should have been in love with this country. He should have been saying, this is the best country on earth. I say, and the parents, I don't know if they did or not, because that's how I feel. And I do think that we need to have a broader conversation about integration in this country. It's got to be active, not passive. It didn't matter so much when only a handful of people were coming from nearby countries at a very slow rate. Now, people from all over the place are coming very quickly, and because of technology, they can still keep their heads and their cultures elsewhere. This is dangerous.
Meanwhile, the government says stricter checks for online knife purchases will be introduced following the Southport attack. Retailers selling knives online will require ID to purchase and also on delivery. It's after it emerged Southport killer Axel Ruda-Cabana bought the knife he used to kill 3 young girls from Amazon when he was just 17 years old. The government has now brought forward planned changes to online knife sales. And some breaking news. A 53-year-old man has been charged with murder of a woman who was found fatally injured in a street in Plymouth. 48-year-old Claire Chick, who taught at the University of Plymouth's nursing school, was taken to hospital but sadly died on Thursday. Paul Butler has been charged with her murder and is due to appear before Plymouth Magistrates Court on Monday. Miss Chick, previously known as Claire Butler, had 5 grandchildren who call her favourite grandma, according to her family. In other news, Israel has prevented thousands of displaced Palestinians from returning home to northern Gaza after accusing Hamas of breaching the ceasefire deal. This comes after Hamas released 4 Israeli female soldiers and Israel freed 200 Palestinian prisoners. But the Israeli government said Palestinians would not be allowed to travel north until plans were in place for the release of Israeli civilian Arbel Yahoud. According to the deal, Hamas was to release civilians before soldiers. And Strictly Come Dancing star Wyn Evans has apologised after being caught on camera making a sexual comment about one of the show's female presenters. The Welsh opera singer has been touring with the live show after competing on the BBC One programme with Katia Jones last year. In the recording obtained by the Mail on Sunday, the 52-year-old was heard making a demeaning sexual remark to a woman during the launch event on January the 16th. Evans has responded with a statement saying, "My language was inappropriate and unacceptable, for which I sincerely apologise." Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michael.
Thank you very much, Sophia Windsor. How can it be that so many respondents to an opinion poll showed so little enthusiasm for democracy, with a sizable minority saying that they would prefer a strong leader who didn't have to bother with elections? Joining me again now is my panel, the former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire, former Special Advisor Nadim Zahawi, James Price, and the former MEP and columnist Patrick O'Flynn. Patrick, let's start with you, because you and I have been elected. We know the joys of democracy, don't we? Are you astonished by this poll? And, I mean, do you take it seriously? Do you think people have considered their opinion before answering this poll?
I'm not astonished by it. I suspect I'm going to be part of a universal pro-democracy front here, but nonetheless, there are certain issues about the quality of outcomes in democratic countries, which have been very poor generally for 20 years, which would lead you to suppose there would be a slump in public faith. And there are, let's be honest, there are some conceptual potential advantages of the strongman model and areas which democracy may be structurally inhibited. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is if you're dealing with an area where the benefits of a policy are backloaded and the costs are front-loaded, perhaps over a 15-year period. We look at the mess of Britain's planning constraints, for instance. There'll always be a handy, pragmatic Liberal Democrat presence to pop up anywhere and undermine what might be the optimal planning decision for a nation. And then I think you can look at the example of social care reform, where almost implicitly the parties admit that democracy hamstrings them because they say we need a cross-party consensus, right? And that means that you're deliberately going to prevent the electorate having a counter choice because you know the policy, again, might be so unpopular in the short term to get to an effective and better system, that you must disable other choices or it won't get off the block. And actually, one final, very quick one. In an atomised society, an identity politics society with different sub-tribes, which probably we're now in compared to, say, the post-war with our huge social solidarity, you may get the biggest in-group, let's call it still, in our country, Indigenous white people might get to a point where they think, well, actually, if we can have one of our guys, strong guy, imposed and look after our subgroup better than the others, then we're for that rather than this unpredictable contest between different identity groups. So those are all factors which lead me not to be surprised that there's a bit of a crisis in faith in democracy.
James, would you like to speak up for youth? Because I've noticed that it's people under 44 particularly who are not very enthusiastic. And I think this may not be very hard to explain because at the moment young people are not getting a very good deal, certainly not compared with young people when I was young. Do you think that may be at the heart of it?
Well, you quoted Robert Frost just now. I'll quote Leonard Cohen and call myself almost young. So I'll try and speak up a bit there. I thought everything that Patrick said there is bang on. And the planning thing, I think, is probably particularly apt with this, how difficult it is for younger people to get on the property ladder because planning has been so restrictive, because older people who, I'm afraid to say, already have homes, like to object to more planning and more housing being built. If they're not beautiful houses, we talked about before, I can understand why you wouldn't want those things to be built, but I do think that's a big blockage. And if you think younger people, you said 20 years, I think is probably about right as well, of this kind of, in the UK, not a huge amount has really changed between the parties. And I think a lot of that is because you have civil servants running so much of the country, regardless of which party is in power. When Labour took office in July last year, 200 people or so changed jobs. That's it. 100 ministers, 100 special advisors, and everybody else carried on as well. So the idea of democracy there, compared to, say, Donald Trump coming in and signing dozens of executive orders and seeing change immediately versus all the rigmaroles, I think is a big factor there. The other thing on the young people, just very quickly, young people watch so much of TikTok these days, this ghastly video app. And a lot of academic literature shows that prolonged exposure to watching this gives people a higher appreciation for the Communist Party of China. Because it's run and owned and controlled by China, you get subtle messages about how great the Communist Chinese Party is. And so if you're being brainwashed by this Chinese superweapon, I'm not surprised that it's making you feel anti-Western ideals like democracy.
Very interesting. Scarlett Maguire, I often wonder whether democracy is doomed because of the way it works, which is basically that, in our system anyway, two sets of people make unrealistic promises to the electorate about what they can do. And all of these promises have the tendency to drive up public spending because basically they're trying to bribe the electorate with their own money. And therefore, as we can see, we're driven closer and closer to bankruptcy. Most of the democracies in Europe now have national debts which are about 100% of GDP, which is quite a serious number. So I'm really getting quite sort of serious now. It doesn't really matter what people think today, but do you think democracy is doomed?
No, I don't think it is. I think that people always, they want action fast, and looking at people who don't have to go through the democratic process, don't have to go through planning, whatever, looks very, very great. And I think we do have to remember that the young are always radical, and radical doesn't mean left-wing, right? Radical means they want answers now. They want things now. And actually, what this system doesn't give you, particularly, frankly, for the young, is any sort of change. And in 1997, lots of the young did not believe in Tony Blair. They didn't believe in the Conservatives either. They just didn't see the point. And one of the problems is the young not voting. That's the real problem with democracy, is the young not voting. And that was one of the things about Brexit, was the young didn't vote, and they might have changed it. But also, there is, I do remember after communism fell in Russia, and I was out there doing some work for the Westminster Foundation, and people wanted strong leaders more than they wanted democracy. And that was after decades of communism, decades of sort of everything going wrong. So I think we have to understand that people like strong leaders because they like action, but actually us old people know that democracy gives you the best.
Patrick and I might agree that the Brexit vote, in a way, reinvigorated our belief in democracy, because it turned out that people could actually change something. They made a decision for themselves. But I'd like to raise with you, Patrick, a slightly different point. With the fall of communism, the fall of the Berlin Wall and so on, we thought it was the end of history. But what has emerged since then, I think, is, particularly perhaps in the case of China, a real competitor to Western democracy. Here is a country that says, we are a different system. And, it's true you don't get to vote in elections, but what you get is efficiency. You get lots of airports, you get high-speed trains, you get rising living standards. You don't need to worry too much about your housing. It's all taken care of. I think in the modern world there is serious competition between the systems. And they're appealing directly, as though they had a good advertising account, they're appealing directly to people in the West.
Yeah, and I think China, on an economic front, has demonstrated, huge uplift over quite a long period of time now, and there's definitely less of an individualist orientation among Chinese citizens, and more of an appreciation of the we and social duty, and it's a completely different mindset, and economically, it's obviously whizzed past the West. But I wonder if you mentioned Brexit, if there's another factor involved in that. Democracy as practiced in the West perhaps has been hollowed out excessively through a mania among the governing class for internationalist constraints and agreements. And I particularly remember, I think it was last year, the European Court of Human Rights published a ruling on Switzerland to do I think it was to do with the policy approach being illegal as regards climate change, a quite absurd degree of intrusion into, and Swiss obviously has quite a direct form of democracy. If you do that to nation-state democracy, then don't really be that surprised if public faith in it starts to ebb away.
I fear this might need to be the last comment, James. Can I just get your take on how pessimistic you might be about the future of democracy?
Well, if Kamala Harris had won, I think I would have been perhaps more pessimistic because it might have shackled America to more of exactly what Patrick was saying there. We've found it impossible to deport foreign criminals in the UK, whereas you look at America, Trump's been in power less than a week, you're already seeing flights taking off with these people. Those kind of executive orders and that kind of, weirdly, for a 78-year-old man, the kind of virility and energy of someone who's just been elected, being able to just do things, it's very exciting. And on the point against China, who's there in that front row in Trump's inauguration? It's Mark Zuckerberg, it's Elon Musk, it's Sundar Pichai, it's all these great industrialists saying, look, this is what the West can do. You can make money, you can be a big star. In China, Jack Ma, who founded Alibaba, all these people, they get disappeared off by the state as soon as they start to do well. And so there, I think, is still inherent flaws in the communist system that we in the West can still exploit to win.
Scarlett, just very briefly, but your last answer, you said you were optimistic about democracy, and then you said lots of things that maybe weren't very optimistic about democracy. So just give us, why are you optimistic about democracy?
Because I agree with Winston Churchill that it's a terrible system, but it's the best that we have. And I think it's the only way that we can have, as you say, Brexit did change things and people voted for it. And I think if you go back to the thing about China is the Chinese we meet, of course, the very rich students who come over here. China is not an equal society. China is a deeply repressed society, right? And actually, what these two aren't saying is the amazing thing about China is it's net zero stuff. When China decides to go for net zero, as it is at the moment, it's doing masses with renewable energy, and it does have an energy. But actually, I don't think that's what the young are looking at. I think the young are saying what we like is great. We like strong, loud leaders.
I thought that China's increase in carbon last year was equivalent to our total usage of carbon last year. But that would be a different discussion, and I might have put it wrong. Scarlett Maguire, James Price and Patrick O'Flynn, thank you so much for being with me. Coming up, Ian Leslie recently attended Marlon Symphony No. 3 at the Barbican, and he'll join me to discuss what makes the effort needed to enjoy classical music worthwhile. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
An absolute monster. It took Chloe and Sean Ing 90 minutes to reel in this gigantic 8-foot-long monster fish from Chigborough Fisheries in Essex. And upon weighing this enormous marine beast, it was found to have been 7 pounds heavier than the existing British record, a 143-pound catfish caught also in Essex. But as I understand it, you actually went for a Chinese meal when fate struck. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So I was fishing an area of Chigborough where you have to fish at a fair distance. So I cast my rods out and then we ordered a Chinese. So I got the bite at about 10 to 8 at night. And then about 20 minutes into it, my phone started ringing, the Chinese guys at the gate with my delivery. So I had to send a couple of guys off to go and get it. And then, the fight, obviously, you can't just stop the fight to go and get your Chinese. The fight went on, for about an hour and a half in total. There's no net in the world that's big enough for this fish. So we had to send out, first of all, I sent out a mate, Alex. He went out there to go and basically use what we call a sling. So that's a safe apparatus that we use to take the fish out of the water. He then went and he turned around and he was like, we're going to need another sling. So then we sent out another friend with a sling, and these slings are 4 foot long each. So then we had the catfish wrapped up in 2 slings, and it was still slightly longer than that. And then we got to a point where we was like, now we've got to try and get it out of the water to photo, to weigh it, because obviously we knew then that it was possibly going to be a UK record.
GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Classical music is timeless and profound, yet it's often regarded as difficult to approach in an age of instant gratification. Why does it still resonate with some people, and where should newcomers begin? And a broader question, what makes engaging with this genre of music worthwhile? Joining me is Ian Leslie, the writer and cultural commentator, who recently attended Mahler's Symphony No. 3 at the Barbican in London, a monumental work in 6 movements lasting around 100 minutes that nonetheless drew a full house. Ian, absolutely marvellous to have you on GB News. Tell me why your visit to hear Mahler's Third inspired you to write an article about the very broad question of whether it's worth the effort to appreciate classical music.
Well, first of all, because it was just such a marvelous and inspiring and emotionally powerful event. It felt very, very, very special. And I think every staging of that symphony in particular, it's so huge, so massive in every way, both in the scale of its ambition and in terms of the number of people on stage, huge orchestra, 2 choirs, a soloist. So it's very exciting to be at. It was a full hall, felt fantastic. But afterwards, I was reflecting on the fact that there's just not many people I know that would have thought to have gone to that concert. Oasis announced their gigs and everyone's on the phone, right? And I just thought, well, it's so special and so sort of intense when you know this music, when you're at least able to enjoy it and appreciate it. I want that to be available to more and more people. I was just reflecting on why that is. Why is it still a niche, and why is it in some ways under assault? It's actually kind of fading away from our national life in some ways. I was just thinking about what we can do about it. So that kind of got me writing, and I just wanted to say, this is an amazing genre, type of music to be into, no matter what your kind of background, whether you know about music or not. And we should all be making more of an effort to get into it, because it's just going to enhance your life. It's going to make your life richer.
You were talking there about a very spectacular musical presentation, an enormous symphony, but you would also advocate people to go to the smallest kind of music, let's say a trio or maybe even a solitary pianist playing a sonata.
Yeah, absolutely. Go and listen to the Goldberg Variations by Bach. Get to know it. One of the things that I say in the piece is classical music really rewards effort. It does require some effort, I think, more than pop music. I'm a huge pop music fan. Just written a book about the Beatles, which is coming out soon. So it's not like I don't like other forms of music, but I do recognize that classical music takes some effort, right? But then you get this huge payback. So it's worth doing it. So what I say is, take a Beethoven piano sonata or the Goldberg Variations by Bach, a trio, a quartet. Listen to it and listen to it again and again and again. Get to know it. Even if you don't have an immediate response to it, the more you listen, the more it will reveal itself to you. And once you've been on that journey, you look back and you go, wow, okay, that was worth it, because you get an immensely enriching experience at the end of it.
Well, one of the things you say, one of the tips you give, is that you could do worse than to start with Beethoven's 9 symphonies. And I was struck that you said that. I grew up in a house where my mother loved Sibelius, and I was hearing Sibelius symphonies a lot. But when I was about 16, I popped out and I bought an enormous box set of, 9 vinyl 12-inch records of Beethoven's symphonies, and just at the age of 16 played them again and again and again, and they became very familiar to me. So I had precisely that experience. And I'd like to echo what you're saying, that it has led me down, a road of loving classical music. But you have a great advantage over me, and I'd like you to discuss the importance of this, which is that you did play the violin when you were a kid. You continue to sing in a choir. The person who doesn't read music, I don't read music. Do you think the person who doesn't read music can still get a great deal out of classical music?
Yes, no question. And you say it's a great advantage. Yeah, the advantage is I was introduced to classical music and listening to it and playing it from since I was a kid, right? And that I do recognise as an advantage. However, I know many people, I'm sure you do, who came to this music later in life, didn't have a musical background and can't read music, who have got into it and actually know more about it and care more, than I do, who are bigger musical buffs than I am. I don't think it's a barrier at all, actually. I think knowing music can kind of add another layer of complexity and appreciation, but I don't think it's necessary. I just think it's music. If you love music, you can get into classical music. So if you love other kinds of music, don't let that stop you. And the caveat being the one I mentioned earlier, which is it doesn't always hit you in the same way as, a brilliant 3-minute pop song will hit you. And sometimes it's a little subtler and it works on you in kind of quieter ways, and you have to give it time and let it breathe and let your kind of your mind and your body kind of get to know it. But anyone can go on that journey, yeah.
And another point I'd make is I think the work never stops. I mean, for example, later this year, I'm going to hear Parsifal, which is an enormously long and complicated opera by Richard Wagner, and I'm listening to it now. I'm already getting my ear in training for that big experience now. But the thing I'd like to say to you, and I know you'll agree, is that in the work that you do, there is joy.
Huge joy, and I felt it intensely at that concert, which is why made me want to write about it. And you can see in the way I write about it, I take huge joy from it. And like a lot of things in life, you get more joy and more appreciation from the things you've put a lot of work into. Having done the work, and it's not always enjoyable. Sometimes I'm listening to a piece and I'm going like, it's the 5th time I've listened to this symphony. I still don't really get it. You listen to it a few more times, then you go to a concert and you kind of you're prepared yourself for a concert. I think it's a great thing that you're doing is, get ready for that concert, almost like an athlete kind of prepares for a big event. Go to that concert, you're prepared, you're trained, you're ready for it, and it really hits you like a steam train. And then you're like, yeah, that was all worth it because this is an amazing experience.
One point you make, I might just underline it, is that you might find that in your local church or your local community centre or whatever, there might be some chamber music, there might be some individual musicians or a trio or a quartet or whatever. And what you'll pay for that will be a very small amount. I mean, it might even be free entry and a donation. So if you compare that with the cost of going to Taylor Swift, well, there's not much comparison, is there?
Well, exactly. And it's one advantage of, I wish classical music was more popular, but one advantage of it being a niche interest is that you can see really top class musicians who've been trained for years and years and work really hard at what they do and are really brilliant for very little, relatively little. And maybe they are playing at your local church or local town hall, whatever. You see that, go and see them. And before you go and see them, listen to the pieces they're playing, try and get to know those pieces, then go and see them. And you'll see that the payoffs are immense.
Ian Leslie, thank you so much. Beautifully spoken, beautifully written as well.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, yesterday brought us Burns Night, the annual commemoration of Scotland's national poet Robert Burns. I'll be joined by a member of the Burns Club of London to discuss Rabi's poetry. But before all of that, your news headlines with Sophia Windsor.
Michael, thank you. Your headlines at 12:30. Donald Trump has said he thinks Sir Keir Starmer has done a very good job thus far and said the pair will speak over the phone over the next 24 hours. The US President said he and the Prime Minister get along well, despite Sir Keir Starmer being Liberal, which he said is a little bit different from me. Mr Trump told reporters on Air Force One that his first international trip could be to the UK or Saudi Arabia, the first country he travelled to as president during his first term. Sir Keir's most recently met with Mr Trump at Trump Towers in New York during the presidential campaign. The Home Secretary has warned tech companies terrorist material viewed by Southport killer Axel Ruda-Cabana could inspire another atrocity unless they take action. Yvette Cooper has written to X, Meta, TikTok, Google and YouTube, calling on them to urgently review material accessed by the killer, which is still available online. Ruda-Cabana easily downloaded an Al-Qaeda training manual and watched graphic footage of a terrorist knife attack before he killed 3 young girls. It comes as it's been revealed the Home Office missed several opportunities to identify him as a terror threat. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch told GB News the issue of integration must be looked at following the Southport attack.
He should have been in love with this country. He should have been saying, this is the best country on earth. I say, and the parents, I don't know if they did or not, because that's how I feel. And I do think that we need to have a broader conversation about integration in this country. It's got to be active, not passive. It didn't matter so much when only a handful of people were coming from nearby countries at a very slow rate. Now, people from all over the place are coming very quickly, and because of technology, they can still keep their heads and their cultures elsewhere.
Now, a 53-year-old man has been charged with the murder of 48-year-old Claire Chick, who was found fatally injured in a street in Plymouth. Miss Chick, who was previously known as Claire Butler, was taken to hospital but sadly died on Thursday. Paul Butler has been charged with her murder and is due to appear before Plymouth Magistrates Court on Monday. Israel has prevented thousands of displaced Palestinians from returning home to northern Gaza after accusing Hamas of breaching the ceasefire deal. This comes after Hamas released 4 Israeli female soldiers and Israel freed 200 Palestinian prisoners. But the Israeli government said Palestinians would not be allowed to travel north until plans were in place for the release of Israeli civilian Arbel Yahoud. According to the deal, Hamas was to release civilians before soldiers. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We hold on to very unsettled weather across the UK over the next few days, all of us seeing some rain at times, often pretty blustery too. Low pressure is anchored towards the west of the UK, a deep air of low pressure, tightly backed isobars, indicating the strength of the winds, and weather fronts moving in from the southwest as we head through the rest of the day on Sunday. So, looking at things in more detail for this afternoon, and confirmation of wet and windy weather sweeping its way north and eastwards across the UK. The far north of Scotland hold on to some fine conditions, certainly until later in the afternoon, and started to turn brighter with some showers developing across the southwest of the UK. Particularly blustery with gales, though, out toward the west and southwest of the UK. Quite chilly towards the north, mild elsewhere, but those temperatures pretty academic given the very unsettled weather. As we head into the evening and overnight, we hold on to some rain across central parts of Scotland. Towards the north, there's still some fine conditions to end the day, but further south, as I say, there will be some rain, some hill snow too across central parts of Scotland. For Northern Ireland, it's a blustery end to Sunday, some showery bursts of rain, and pretty showery across the central slice generally of the UK, with some clearer spells towards the south for a time, but notice further outbreaks of rain starting to push in from the southwest, and that heralds a pretty unsettled night to come across the UK. The first band of rain was some hill snow affecting the far north of the UK there. A further pulse of wet weather moving its way northeastwards across England and Wales. We need to keep an eye on the strength of the wind, particularly down towards the southeast tonight. Gales are quite likely in places here. And wherever you are, generally frost-free. A touch of frost possible towards the far north of Scotland, but elsewhere temperatures generally in mid-single figures. As for us, Monday then, it's a very unsettled start to the new working week, I'm afraid. Low pressure dominating once again. Showers or longer spells of rain in all parts of the UK. Blustery winds too, particularly out towards the south and west of the UK. Some particularly heavy rain across parts of Wales at times too. And again, those temperatures close to the seasonal average, 5 to 9 Celsius, but the wind and rain feeling much cooler out and about.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. "Nae man can tether time or tide." How very true. As we turn to Burns Night, the annual celebration of Scotland's national poet Robert Burns, we do well to reflect on the themes at the heart of Burns's poetry. It is said to capture the heart of Scottish identity, and it reflects on love, friendship and social justice. Each year on January the 25th, people around the world gather to honour his legacy with traditional recitations, the pipes, haggis, bashneeps and whisky. And joining me now is James Fairbairn of the Burns Club of London, an organisation dedicated to preserving and promoting the works of Rabbie Burns. Hello. I hope, James, that you had a splendid evening last night.
We had a very splendid evening. Thank you very much. We had all of those things. We also had a first-rate fiddler who played a number of tunes that Burns might have used for his songs.
Actually, why not begin there? Because we think of him as a poet, but he was also a tremendous writer and compiler of songs.
Yes, he was. I mean, I think, in my opinion, that's probably his greatest legacy, because he was always writing songs. His first poem when he was 15 was a song to Handsome Nell, a young lass he was paired with at the harvest. But the last 6 years of his life, when he was living in Dumfries as an exciseman, as a gauger, he wrote, repaired, mended, adapted roughly 350 songs, which were sent to two publishers in Edinburgh, James Johnson and George Thompson. And by doing that, he's preserved many of the airs and the lyrics which might otherwise have been lost.
That's very interesting, because it seems kind of quite early in history for a man to be aware that there was a heritage here that was in danger of disappearing, and he had a sense of duty to preserving it.
He had a sense of duty, and he also had a love of it. I mean, almost with only one or two exceptions, he set his lyrics to tunes. He didn't write words and then somebody gave him a tune. He had all these tunes in his head because when he was a boy at home on the farm, there were people singing. And after he published the Kilmarnock edition in 1786, and he became suddenly famous, and he had a bit of money in his hands because he sold the copyright to his publisher for 100 guineas, probably about £50,000 today. He embarked on several tours of Scotland. He went down to the borders and made his first trip into England. He went up to the north to Inverness. He went into Stirlingshire and to Argyll. And as he went along, he picked up tunes and scraps of lyrics. And he brought all those. He had a commonplace book. He'd write them all down in. And I think he must have been able to notate music because he had these tunes. And when he was composing his tunes, he would sometimes have a fiddler come and play them over and over again to him so that he could match his words exactly to the cadences and the rhythms of the tunes. And that is shown And one example is a song called "A Whistle and I'll Come Take You, My Lad." And if you read it on the page as a poem, you think this isn't terribly good because the caesura bounces about and it doesn't seem to fit, and you think this is odd. Then you hear it sung, and all of a sudden the whole thing just fits perfectly to the melody, and you think, what a wonderful song, what a wonderful melding of melody and words.
What a very interesting tip. Tell me about the languages in which you wrote, because I think his first publication, they were described as in the Scottish dialect.
They were poems chiefly in the Scottish dialect. Well, he really wrote in a mixture of, I would call it Scottish English and Lowland Scots. And very few of his poems are purely one or the other. And that is a barrier because he does use a lot of vocabulary which most Scots today wouldn't know unless they looked it up. But I think when he's writing in Scots, or I call it English Scots because he's writing in English, but the rhythms and the cadences are probably following that which a Scotsman or a Scotswoman would use, as opposed to classical English. But he was extremely well-read. I mean, he was educated from an early age. A collective of farmers hired a tutor to educate their sons, and Gilbert, Robert's younger brother, and Robert went to John Murdoch for, I suppose, a year and a half. Robert was very bright. He was actually a genius, in my opinion, and once he learned to read, then he read and read and read. So he had read all of Shakespeare, Milton, Shenstone, all these classical authors. He knew them.
And by the way, we experience a barrier with all of those authors because English has changed a lot as well.
That's true.
Shall we say a word about his chaotic private life?
We certainly can do, yes. I think history's been slightly unfair to him, I think, because he was, well, first of all, became very famous, so people were, looking at him and his life. And second of all, he was a great letter writer. His collected letters occupy 2 volumes in print. And he didn't see anything wrong. In fact, he kind of revelled in the whole idea of sexual relations with women. He thought it was natural, he thought it was right, and he didn't see that it was sinful in the eyes of the church. He always acknowledged his paternity. He wrote this lovely poem, Dear Bought Bess, to his first so-called illegitimate daughter. But we know all about his exploits, his exploits with Hochmagandy, as the Scottish word is. But actually, he wasn't alone. He wasn't an exception.
Right.
There's a wonderful quote from a man called Andrew Noble, the session clerk of Mauchline Parish Church, where Burns worshipped and where he was made to sit on the cutty stool, the stool of repentance, while the minister fulminated. And Andrew Noble writes in his minutes in 1784, he says, only 24 fornicators in the parish since the last sacrament. Now, the sacrament is Holy Communion, which is celebrated once a quarter, so the running rate was about 8 a month. So it's not as if Robert was this only person in rural Scotland who was having it away with the local lassies. But we just know about what he was up to because he wrote about it and because he was famous. So I don't think he was an exception.
Absolutely fascinating. I'm very pleased that you had a great night last night. And this will go on decade after decade, century after century, I think, the annual celebration of Rabbie Burns.
I think so. I think in your introduction, I mean, you said that I'm an expatriate Scot. I was born in Hong Kong, although Mum and Dad were both from Glasgow. And if you're Firth of Scotland, to use a Scottish word, celebrating Burns is a way of celebrating being Scottish. And I think that will always go on. But it is extraordinary how in London, how many people attend a Burns supper. And it's not just the 25th of January. I mean, there's a whole season that starts sort of round about the 10th and goes on to the end. Last night was my 8th Burns event this season, and I've got 2 more to go next week. So I haven't been short of haggis recently, Michael.
You're a brave man, and today I salute my Scottish grandfather, John Walgrave Blythe. Thank you very much, James Fairbairn. Coming up, as we storm headfirst towards February, Dry January is drawing to a close, unobserved and unmourned on this particular sofa. Wine expert Lily Thomas will join me and share some wine with a look forward to the rest of 2025.
Be nice to escape the grey. Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's plenty of sunshine on offer for many over the next couple of days in Europe, but there is some heavy rain as well, particularly for parts of Portugal, northern Spain, northwestern parts of France, and some blustery westerly winds as well continuing throughout Monday. Further east, though, there is plenty of sunshine on offer for southern parts of Italy, Greece, Cyprus, seeing plenty of sunshine throughout Monday afternoon. Temperatures here generally in the mid to high teens, with the highest temperatures likely across Tenerife, where we'll see temperatures around 22 or 23.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Have you noticed that more and more stores are closing? Well, last year, apparently 13,000 stores closed for the last time on the high street.
Well, experts warn the worst is still to come for our small businesses.
Well, let's talk to retail expert Jeremy Baker. Good morning to you, Jeremy. How bad is it and what can be done?
Well, nothing can be done about it. Retail is like that. It's a boom and bust operation. So last year, let's say you had a shop and it was booming. This year, the consumer can just change their mind. They don't need to come back to your shop ever again.
Well, it is sad, Jeremy, because our high streets are the beating heart of our communities, aren't they? And for many people, I know I can relate to my high street, it is such a depressing sight, walking down there and seeing them all boarded up and closed down.
But how often do you walk down that boarded up high street? I think people move on to something else. The online world is very big. Yeah. And lots of other things are very exciting. And so people, you know, the shop, I like to go to my GP in a shopping centre and get my tests done there rather than tramp off all the way to the GP, for example. And children could go to little schools in the high street. I've seen that happen already. So lots of things could happen to the high street. It could be much more a social centre. Much more kind of like pubs, coffee shops, all that. Charities. I don't see anything wrong with charities taking over. But the idea of the shop-centred high street, finished, that's gone. Never coming back. Goodbye. It's not sad, it's just life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. With dry January now almost behind us, many are ready to indulge once again. But as the wine industry continues to evolve, what should we be looking forward to in the year ahead? Joining me is Lily Thomas, a wine expert with insights into what to try in 2025. Hello, Lily. So, you've brought here a lovely sparkling wine.
Yes.
Let us begin with that. Perfect. Tell me about this sparkling wine. Where's it from?
So it is a Blanquette de la Meaux. So it's from, from the south of France. It's basically a Cremant, but with a grape called Moussac. And
I've been discovering Cremants recently. So we're talking about sparkling wines with a jolly nice taste, but at a fraction of the price of champagne, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. Cheers.
So, for example, if I found this in a shop, what might I pay for it, do you think?
It's around £10, so really brilliant price point. Made in the same way as champagne for that price is
You are brilliant. You have managed to bring into the GB News studio a wine at the right temperature, and that is thoroughly enjoyable. I mean, that really is enjoyable, and no, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to complete the sentence. You almost wonder why you'd have a champagne when you could have so much fun for £10. That's absolutely lovely.
Exactly. I mean, it's got lovely sort of peach and apricot flavours, and with a little bit of brioche.
And this is made in the same way as champagne.
Exactly.
So it's not made the way that what's that dreadful Italian stuff called?
Prosecco. Yes, well, that's
not made in the same way as Prosecco.
Tank method. Yeah, no, not like that.
And that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's much better, sort of taste-wise and flavours and quality.
You look very cheerful with that with that glass in your hand. Now we thought we might also have a still white wine, and well, tell me about this. Chapel Down.
Yes.
Bacchus.
Yes. So
from Tenterden, which is in Kent.
It is. It is. So it's a still English wine, which usually English wines are sparkling, and it's nice to have a still one. This is maybe a good alternative to a Sauvignon Blanc. The Bacchus grape grows really well in the UK, and it's got similar aromatic profile.
Is there any reason why the English, and I emphasise these wines mainly are in England rather than Wales or Scotland or Ireland, is there any reason why the English shouldn't make still wine? Why is it we tend to think of English wine as being sparkling?
I think it just suits the climate a little bit more. I mean, we don't get that much sunshine, so we're not going to get super ripe wine, so...
Now, describe that wine to me. Jolly peachy, I would say. Is that peachy?
Yeah, it's quite citrus and zesty as well. There's quite a lot of apple and pear, sort of a bit green. There's sort of a leafy kind of hedgerow kind of thing going on there.
When you're tasting wine, it seems you can say almost anything. I did recognise all those things you mentioned. This would not be very strong, no. 11.5, that's the strength of it, which I think is a terrific advantage.
Yes, exactly.
Why? Because it means you can drink lots of it without getting too heady or too drunk. Now, we're moving on here to a Beaujolais. Why have you suggested a Beaujolais?
Because I thought it was a nice alternative to a Pinot Noir. I think a lot of people like Beaujolais. Well, they know it, and they like something lighter. And I think it's just very versatile and very good value as well.
Tell me about the value. How much might this be in a shop?
Around £15. So
yeah, that is good value.
It is.
Now, Beaujolais is a wine that you drink young.
Yes, yes.
So how old is this?
That's from, I think it's
2022. I think I just glanced it, and that's it. I mean, you would never think with a Beaujolais of going longer than that.
I think actually you could age it quite well, and some of the good quality appellations they do longer aging, but drink it young. It's got some nice berry fruit and some oaky notes as well. So
that's very enjoyable. And again, I feel I could drink quite a lot of that without being too much the worse for wear. Just trying to look... Oh, no, I was wrong. I was completely wrong.
It's about 14.
14?
Yes.
Well, that has surprised me. I thought that would be a little bit...
It's testament to the wine that it's sort of quite integrated and tastes like it would be lighter.
Just tell me a tiny word about yourself.
Yes.
Describe you as a wine expert. What do you do?
So I would say I was a wine communicator. So I write about wine. Well, I mean,
yeah, that's great.
So I write about wine, speak about wine on social media, and just try to make wine more interesting and accessible for everyday people.
So we all benefit from your wisdom and knowledge and your splendid palate.
Yes, I hope so.
Thank you very much for bringing the wines, and thank you very much for the tips for 2025. Well, thank you very much to all of my guests who have joined me this week. It's been a real pleasure to share your company at home as well. I'll be back at the same time next week. Next on GB News, Dawn Neeson with The Weekend, so stay for her.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The weather stays very unsettled as we head into the new working week. Often wet and windy, although signs of things becoming a bit drier and quieter later on in the week. Low pressure's anchored towards the west of the UK at the moment, tightly packed isobars indicating the strength of the wind, and weather fronts moving in from the southwest too, bringing some persistent rain at times. So confirmation of a wet start to the evening and overnight. A rain band pushing its way north into Scotland as we go through the overnight period, turning to snow across the hills here. And meanwhile, notice further outbreaks of rain moving in from the southwest across England and Wales. We need to keep an eye on the strength of the wind, particularly towards the southeast. Here we're likely to see gales at times overnight tonight. And a generally frost-free night tonight with temperatures around mid-single figures. As for the start of the new working week then, well, once again, with low pressure dominating, sitting close by towards the west of the UK, it'll be a very unsettled start.